Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on a bright, blue sky, dry, clear, wonderful day here in Boston, in which Boston was spared the morning after chaos of so much of the rest of the Northeast that was struck over the last 24 hours by the remnants of Hurricane Ida. Some remnants. I've seen horrifying footage on Twitter and Instagram of massive floods, massive property damage, tornadoes touching down in Maryland and New Jersey. God only knows what Central Park or parts of it look like this morning. Boston was spared that entirely. We got a gentle, warm, persistent rain overnight, and that's all. Not a single breath of wind, and all that is over with. So everything feels fresh. It feels like the first time in I know this isn't accurate, but it feels like the first time in 2 weeks where the dew point is not well above 75%. Well, 75 degrees. It's been so humid, even when it wasn't broiling hot. It's been so humid here, and I don't get that feeling. But I will examine it in more detail in a few minutes once the Bean and I go for a nice long walk. We're gonna go for a nice long walk today. We had a bit of a contretemps earlier today. She had a little knot of something that was knotted in on the fur on her left flank, and she's okay with me cuddling her and caressing her and cooing with her and pawing with her, but she doesn't like me fixing anything that's out of her sight. She can't reach that thing, or it wouldn't have been there. She's a very meticulous dog, but I was fiddling with it, just wondering what it is and how we can get it off, and she didn't like that at all. But we got past it. So anyway, I want to get you mail, but I want to give you a couple of updates first. One is pop culture news. I've already had a lot of emails from people asking me what I think about the new trailer for I think it's Amazon is producing The Wheel of Time. And a trailer has dropped for it, and a lot of you wanted to know what I think of it, and what do you think I think of it? If you've seen it, you already know what I think of it. It looks like a very high-budget, very exciting filming of a novel sequence in which Moraine and her all-female society fight the forces of darkness with the help of an Oriental swordsman. I think for a couple of seconds, if you look really hard in the trailer, you might see a trio of white young men. But fortunately, the trailer is all about a women-only society of mystics. And really, that's what the book was about, right? That trio of young men, young male friends, barely plays a role in the books at all. So it looks like it'll be nice and accurate. I, of course, do not judge things by their trailers. I try not to. We shall see. I'm holding out hope for The Wheel of Time, that it sticks to, I don't know, the main plot that it had for 50 books, instead of exclusively pandering to 21st century Twitter politics. No matter what you have to do along those lines, no matter what you have to do, watching the trailer reminded me of an old film reviewing friend of mine. He's since got out of the business. He got out of the business, not probably coincidentally, in 2017. And in his darker moments over wine here at Hyde Cottage, he has told me for years now that we will live to see a big screen, huge production Hollywood movie of Moby Dick in which Queequeg is a woman. I no longer doubt that. I no longer doubt that. But to take The Wheel of Time, which is about, if you're going to say it's about anything, it's about three young male friends. To take that and produce a trailer like you did, maybe it was the trailer that was produced in order to avoid everyone involved having their homes firebombed by 21st century political zealots. Maybe that's what happened, that the trailer was produced that way, but the show will not be. If the show is the story of an all-female mystic society with the help of an Oriental swordsman fighting the forces of darkness, and oh yeah, once every 3 episodes will include the adventures of these 3 men, then the show is not an adaptation of The Wheel of Time. We'll see. Maybe it will be. So that is the pop culture update that a lot of you have already asked for, and that's to sort of head off all the future requests, because I know they're gonna be there. That people are going to be talking about that trailer. You can be sure. that the alt-right reactionary swath of YouTube, that for some reason YouTube allows still to be there. And it's not for some reason, it's not a mystery, it's because they bring in clicks. There's nothing that brings in and keeps people clicking more than rabbit holes. More than being red-pilled on just about anything. There's a huge segment of Twitter's market plan that is based on people going to Twitter in order to top off on anger. So those channels are blindingly successful. And I already know that once that trailer starts to make the rounds with them, they're all going to hate it. And they're going to hate it for what look like, on the surface, to be the same reasons that I do. Which is that it looks like 21st century Twitter identity politics being shoved down the reader's throat. That's actually not. That's the reason that I don't like it. Mainly, I don't like that coercive fascist aspect of it at all. It is clearly positioning itself as yet another 21st century visual production that you are not allowed to dislike. But aside from that, the trailer anyway, it's just egregiously, it's laughably inaccurate to the stress of the book. Now, maybe it was just the trailer. Maybe the show will retain that stress. I don't have any hopes for that, but we shall see. But one way or another, now you know what I think about the trailer. And the other update I want to give before we get to the books is an equipment update. Not a tech update, but an equipment update. The other day, I got this thing. I actually unboxed it on this channel. It is a storage clipboard. So you have a nice strong clip there that you write on. It has a compartment for pens, and it opens up to one compartment and then another. So you've got an inner compartment there where you can put things. And I got this because I had a clipboard. I had a little plastic toolbox of stuff. Address labels, block erasers, ordinary pencils, ordinary pencil sharpeners, mechanical pencils, clear plastic tape, scissors. I put all that stuff inside a little tackle box that a publisher actually sent me. I had that and a whole bunch of other things, and I thought, what about combining all of those in a storage clipboard like you see on construction sites? And I got this thing because it isn't metal, and so it wasn't going to gouge me. It has these nice rounded corners, and I've been using it. The big debate that I had with myself and with you when I unboxed it on this channel was, would I switch over my journal to loose pages kept in a storage clipboard, even though we're not at the end of the year? And a lot of you predicted that I would, and I did. And I haven't missed it for a minute. I had a big sketchbook. It was one of that big sketchbook was one of the many things that I had all around my little workstation here, that each one serve only one purpose. I'd rather not have that. I'd rather have just a thing that serves lots of purposes. I'd like to cut down on the number of things that I need for one purpose only. That's why I've been giving my trusty iPhone 6S the hairy eyeball, because it doesn't work as a phone and it doesn't work as much else. It does one or two things well, and I don't want tech like that. I don't want tech like that. I want, like, for instance, a heavily armored tablet over by where I eat, where I sit to eat. I don't want to have to, guaranteed, if you're making your food and then you bring it over to sit to eat it, guaranteed you're going to forget to bring any kind of, I look at my iPad while I'm eating, and you're guaranteed you're going to forget to do that. So I got a cheap iPad, this thing here. I got an Amazon 10-inch Kindle, and I put it in one of these armored cases, and that is just as well, because it being on a little table where I'm getting up and down all the time has meant that case has blasted down to the floor about 1 million times. That Kindle would be in small pieces if I didn't have that protection. Are you getting down, baby? But aside from that, I mean, that duplicates everything. That has everything on it, so that when I'm elsewhere, I don't have to bring technology to that elsewhere. But when I'm right here, in this little corner, doing my day's work and my day's fun, I'd like to limit the number of things that do those things. And in that regard, the storage clipboard has been a godsend. Just incredible. Don't know why I didn't think about it decades ago. perfect for journal keeping, perfect for keeping all those loose odds and ends all in one place. The only problem with it, which I could only discover by using it, is that it opens from the bottom. Which is fine if you're on a work site. You know, if you've got the thing flat on a table in a work site, or you're holding it like this and you want to check on things with contractors or whatever. But it isn't quite as convenient for me when I'm using it just here on the couch. I have lost count over the week that I've had this thing. I've lost count of how many times I have opened it, fumbled with the opening because it's not a natural gesture. It's down at the bottom. You have to push it in and pull it up. I've lost count of how many times I've done that and had almost the whole contents spill out onto me. And I was fighting with that, and I was enjoying all the rest of it, but I was fighting with that, and I was thinking, well, what are you going to do? And then I realized, wait a minute, you bought this thing. You could buy another one. That's what you could do. So I did. I ordered a storage clipboard that opens from the side, that opens like a book. And we'll see. Ergonomically, just the daily usage, we'll see if that's any better. I'll have them both so that I'll have both options. These things are cheap, so I can give it a try. So that's an equipment update. It's not a tech update because I'm sticking to my word. I'm not going to get any more tech in 2021. In 2022, I have my eye on a piece of tech that I want. Actually, two. I don't know whether I want a large iPhone, an iPhone 10, an iPhone 11, something large, what the kids call a phablet, a bigger iPhone, something that's great for media consumption, has a great camera, all that sort of thing, great battery life. I can find one of those. I'm sure I can find a later model iPhone for $500. I'm sure that I can. I'm debating that because I'm traumatized by my iPhone 6s. It works just great, except it doesn't work as a phone. And nothing I've been able to do makes it work as a phone. The only hope I have that anyone can make it work as a phone is to bring it in to an AT&T store here in Boston, stand around in my mask until one of the congenital idiots who are called geniuses at the store is free, and then ask them to make it work as a phone. Find out why it doesn't work as a phone, and either make it work as a phone or replace it right here from the shop while I'm standing here and demonstrate to me that the replacement works as a phone. If that were to happen, well, that would change a lot. That would change a lot. Right now, I do all of my reading on my iPad mini. But that's actually, as long as I'm showing you technology, my iPad mini. A phablet would be about that big. It would be functionally the same kind of reading experience. So if I had an iPhone 10 or an iPhone 11 that worked as a phone, so I didn't need my little burner phone, to show you more of this. See all the tech that I have here. I have the little burner phone here that I got for $15 online, and it came with a SIM card, and it works just fine as a phone. But I don't prefer it for anything else. I don't. If I got a larger iPhone that worked as a phone, had plenty of storage for ebooks, worked as a camera, well, then that would change this conversation completely, and it might obviate the other possible tech purchase for 2022, which is a better iPad mini, a newer iPad mini. The only problem with this device is that, aside from the fact that it's branded with the Richardson name, the only problem with this device is that its ability to pick up Wi-Fi is weak. It needs to be pretty much on top of the modem, or it won't pick up Wi-Fi. So you just get a notice at the bottom of the screen saying no connection. And before you get ahead of me here, a lot of you are going to be saying it right to the screen. That isn't necessarily a detraction. Certainly in the last 10, 15 days, it hasn't been a distraction at all. When I'm done out here and Frida wants to go to sleep, we move into the little book room, which is far away from the modem, too far away for the iPad mini. It just stops being able to pick up the Wi-Fi in that room. And for a fraction of a second in the first of those 15 days, I thought that was a drawback. And then I realized, well, no, I'm just going to read. Anyway, books are already on the thing. Thousands of them are already on the thing. So I'm just going to read. I don't need Wi-Fi. And it's been really nice. Really, really nice. So maybe I don't need a stronger iPad mini. Maybe I don't. This thing works just fine. But either way, that tech will happen in 2022. Okay. I have an iPad mini. I have an iPhone 6s. I have a burner phone. Maybe in early 2022, I take the iPhone 6s to the dealership, to the AT&T store, and just bite the bullet. There's one right near where I go several times a week. I could do it. I could have done it long since. And they will have an answer. There's a new SIM card in this thing. It still doesn't work. The machine works perfectly fine, so it's not a mechanical problem. They will have an answer. And then maybe a lot of these things will solve themselves. I certainly don't need a new iPhone if my iPhone 6s works just fine as a phone. And that would mean that I don't have two devices that look like phones. One for everything else and one for making phone calls. Anyway, let's now that the 15-minute throat clearing is over, let's get on to the books and see what we have here. Probably a mixed bag, as book hauls always are on this channel. What is this first one? Oh, goodness. Okay. This is from St. Martin's Press. This comes out in a trade paperback in the 21st of September. So late, 2 weeks. This is by Helena Hunting, and it's called When Sparks Fly. One spark ignites their passion, but will their friendship go down in flames? A charming, hilarious, and emotional friends to lovers story. Avery Spark, good Lord, that's her name, is living her best life. That's a Twitter cliche. Between her friends, her sister, and Spark House, the event hotel her family owns, she doesn't have much time for anything else, especially relationships. She'd rather hang out with her best friend and roommate, Declan McCormick, than deal with the dating scene. But everything changes when she is in a car accident and needs someone to care for her as she heals. Declan avoids relationships, giving him a playboy reputation that he lives up to when he puts a one-night stand ahead of a promise he made to Avery. While he may not have been the one driving the car, he feels responsible for Avery's injuries and is determined to make it up to her by stepping into the role of caretaker. So maybe he was going to pick her up and didn't, and so she got in a car crash. Little did they know that the more time they spend in compromising positions, the attraction they've been refusing to acknowledge becomes impossible to ignore. Yeah, that sentence is constructed wrong. The more X means the more Y. It doesn't mean the more X something else, but that's okay. When they finally give in to the spark between them, neither is prepared for the consequences. Their love is fragile, and all it will take is a blow from the past to shatter it all. Okay, classic friends to lovers story. Those, as I mentioned on this channel before, when we talk about romance, those are tricky. Those are very tricky to do well. I firmly believe that a great number, I wouldn't be willing to put a number on it, but I'd be willing to bet that a huge percentage of romantic relationships in America today are friends to lovers. Were, in their origin story, friends to lovers. I'd be willing to bet that's true for a huge amount of them, and yet, oddly, it's a very difficult thing for writers to capture convincingly on the page. So we'll see if Helena Hunting does that. All right, so we're off to a good start with a romance. Let's see what this next one is. These huge cardboard packages. Can't do anything about. Frida used to be all about tearing those cardboard things apart. Now she can't be bothered. Okay, so what have we got here? This seems familiar. Okay, this is another paperback original. This is coming out in late October, so a month after When Sparks Fly. But it's coming out as a $16 paperback, which is great. More publishers should do that. The decision off the top of your head, at the spur of the moment in a bookstore and a new release table to buy a $16 new release is going to be a lot easier to make than the off the top of your head, spur of the moment decision to buy a $40 new release. That's just simple arithmetic, right? And it won't be completely uninformed because you'll have this video. Though this is Cascade by Craig Davidson. This is a collection of short stories. And he is referred to as the best-selling author of the Saturday Night Ghost Club and Rust and Bone. Here he writes in the acknowledgments that these 7 stories are, quote, informed by my perspective as a husband and father. In other words, they're mimeographed from his experience as a husband and as a father, with actual snippets of dialogue from clips of Instagram stories. So nothing has been invented anywhere in the course of this book, where all of it is completely documentable to the last detail if you scour the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram feeds of the people involved. That's what informed by means in the 21st century. Still could be good. They explore family relationships, particularly parents and children, through a menagerie of unforgettable characters, broken people caring for the even more broken. A child services worker struggling with infertility bonds with and mothers a boy and his infant sister in a way their own careless mother should, but doesn't. That sentence practically has a hernia. A former pro basketball player just out of prison for attacking a fan in the stands who racially abused him. All right, this pub sheet, the writer of this pub sheet has a problem with overpacked sentences. Seeks redemption in mentoring. At risk of his own career, a gifted yet developmentally stunted rookie. A pediatric surgeon, all right, let's find out everything there is to know about him. A pediatric surgeon who has surmounted his own genetic disorder as best he can is tested to his limits by an emergency brain operation on a patient whose life, in a shocking twist, is entangled with his own. The second meaning of cascade, a process where information is passed on, resonates powerfully in these and other microscopic examinations of the genes, love, and indignities we inherit from our parents and others, and how they define us for better or worse. Okay, all right, well, this comes out in late October. Let's see here. The physical cascade of the book's title and the book's cover, as you can see, refers to the always audible, always palpable Niagara Falls, here fictionalized as Cataract City, where these stories are set. Using a native's knowledge of the real thing, Davidson imbues the stories with a uniquely vivid sense of place, a place both famous and forgotten, and poisoned by the local chemist plant. As in Rust and Bone, the stories in Cascade are brilliantly cinematic, deftly cross-cutting across time and space, in some cases to characters' time fighting the war in Iraq, with overall effect of creating a world that unites them all. Okay. Davidson's extensive research allows him to render the inner worlds of a paramedic, a fire investigator, a pro basketball player, and a surgeon/amateur armchair arm wrestler in all their slang and inside jokes. Okay, well, that would be great. It'd be great if it was research that was guiding this thing. That's what writers should do. They read up on something that interests them and then make it live on the page. That'd be a lot better than drawing from your own experiences. They've had way too much of that in the 21st century. I'm a little bit confused about Cataract City, I must admit. I mean, I know it's a time-honored tradition among writers of the made-up stories to create fictional worlds where they can just have everything happen, right? Yoknapatawpha County being the most famous example. But how effective is it really? What kind of sense does it make really if your fictional world is a town poised on one of the most dramatic waterfalls in the world? That's kind of distinctive. If you're going to do that, it's kind of, I mean, it's different if you're talking about one heat-oppressed, racist, benighted southern town. Those are a dime a dozen. But Niagara Falls is not a dime a dozen. I don't know. It seems like, it seems almost like, writing your stories in a fictional city that happens to have a really good view of the Eiffel Tower. But it could be convincing. We shall see. So let's see. Let's just barrel on here. What's this next one? I realize, for those of you carpers in the back row, that I am not, in fact, barreling. I'm doing the best I can. I've got so many opinions. Frida. Oh my God, you're slurping off camera now, baby. Come up here. Come up here and show yourself to your fans. Go on. You were slurping off camera, baby. I don't want you to be slurping at all. Goodness gracious. All right, so what have we got here? This is from the University of Nebraska Press. This is by Ira Sukrungraung. 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 It's called This Jade World. Very pretty. Very nice design here. No sheet for it, so let's see here. This Jade World centers on a Thai American who has gone through a series of life changes. The author married young to an older poet. On their 12th anniversary, he received a letter asking for a divorce, sending him into a deepening spiral. How would he define himself when he was suddenly without the person who shaped and helped mold him into the person he is? After all these years, he asked himself what he wanted and found no answer. He did not even know what wanting meant. And so, in the year between his annual visits to Thailand to see his family, he gave in to urges, both physical and emotional, found comfort in the body, many bodies, fought off the impulse to disappear, to vanish. Disappear and vanish are synonyms, you don't need both, until he arrived at some modicum of understanding. During this time, he sought to obliterate the stereotype of the sexless Asian man and began to imagine a new life with new possibilities. A lot of that confuses me. A lot of it does. I mean, it's meant to, in a way. It's meant to be vague so that it doesn't give away anything. What stereotype of the sexless Asian man? Are any of you familiar with that stereotype? I thought I knew them all. I don't know that one at all. I've been in the homes of a lot of Asian men. I've never experienced that stereotype. Honestly, I don't know where that comes from. A friend of mine, I was a guest at his house for almost 2 weeks in northern China a long time ago, and it was a standing joke that he couldn't keep his hands off his wife. I said, do you mind? She's trying to make us dinner. So and Japan, good Lord, young men in Japan think of nothing else. I don't know what that is. And a new life with new possibilities. I don't know what's going on here. I think this cover copy could have been more explicit without giving anything away. Like, for instance, the older poet. Is the older poet a man? And if so, is the voyage of self-discovery here, the body, many bodies, is that more men? Well, we've got a couple more paragraphs to see if we can make sense of this. Through ancient temples and the lush greenery of Thailand, to the confines of a stranger's bed and a devouring couch. That's what this couch has been referred to by many guests, a devouring couch. This little couch where I spend so much of my time is one of those couches where the longer you sit on it, the more you are subtly pushing the two couch cushions out from the back of the couch. They're not connected to the couch, they're not attached. So that it does feel after a while like the couch is swallowing you, but I don't think that's what this description means. This Jade World chronicles a year of mishap, exploration, and experimentation, self-discovery, and eventually healing. It questions the very nature of love and heartbreak, uncovering the vulnerability of being human. And the author is the author of 5 books, including Buddha's Dog and Other Meditations. He's the president of Sweet, a literary confection, which is a website, and is the Richard L. Thomas Professor of Creative Writing at Kenyon College. Okay, so what do we know about this thing? This thing comes out as a paperback. So this is our 3rd paperback original in October for $20. Very pretty thing. So a memoir. I can only assume that this Jade World is the alternate 3-word title for My Bad Breakup. It could be a very affecting memoir. I mean, it has blurbs already. Beth Ann Fennelly says, this Jade World is compulsively readable. Its short chapters are polished stones, each delightful by itself while leading us to another, until we've walked the road through the author's divorce and into his new life and love. Okay, well, we will see. I have a feeling that maybe the older poet is a woman, and that maybe the author divorces and then experiments with people who aren't women. We shall see. It doesn't come up for a while, so it doesn't go on my docket, but that's 3 paperback originals in a row. Is the publishing industry finally having the sense to listen to Steve? None of the rest of you do. Let's see if this next one is. No way that this is all going to be paperbacks. There's just no way that's going to happen. What have we got next here? Okay. Oh my God, look at all of this stuff. Okay, this next one is also a paperback, but it is not a paperback original. Good Lord, I do not need the text of War and Peace attached to it. This is a paperback reprint. It is still a paperback. This is a paperback reprint that's coming out in a few days, Tuesday. And this is The Heart, Frida Kahlo in Paris by Mark Pettigene, that some of you may remember from when it came out originally. Got positive reviews in Publishers Weekly, Booklist, and Kirkus. And the sell sheet here starts off with a long bit of praise from the Washington Post. but also bits of praise from Book Forum and the Times Literary Supplement. All right, that's exactly what you want to do with your pub sheet when your book has already been out. You want to make sure that the reviewer that you're sending it to knows that it was highly praised, because it's an uphill battle. It really is. If you are a publicist for a new book that's come out as a paperback reprint, different if it's a paperback original. That is different, a little different. There are long-standing prejudices against that as well in the publishing and the reviewing world. But a book that comes out as a paperback reprint, oh my, that is an uphill battle. To try and stir up any kind of publicity awareness for this thing is an uphill battle. The publicists of books like this, they've got a book that's coming out now as a paperback reprint that was previously out in hardcover. They know already that there's going to be a small segment of the already tiny reading public that made a mental note when it was out in hardcover that they would get it when it came out in paperback. So they've already got those people. But they want to spread the word about the paperback for all the people who weren't aware of the book in hardcover, and it's an uphill battle, especially when it comes to generating reviews. I don't know of a book section editor who will commission a review of a paperback reprint. I don't know of anyone who will do that. If the paperback reprint is with a different publisher and the author has become notorious in the meantime, maybe. But otherwise, no. So it's an uphill battle for this thing, but let me tell you about it in case you want it, because it's coming out in just a few days. Though she's one of the most influential and recognizable artists of the 20th century, there has only been one major biography about Frida Kahlo, published in 1983. Could swear I've read 3. Anyway. And much of her life remains woefully unexplored. I'd be willing to bet money that isn't true. This book, out soon in paperback, the author brings to light an oft-ignored but crucial period of Frida Kahlo's life, her lone year spent in Paris right before the outbreak of World War II. Part biography, part investigation. Oh, those can be so much fun. Those can be so much fun. I know if you've not read any of that combination might sound self-indulgent, but they can be so much fun. I read one of those this year that was absolutely fantastic. A book that was part biography and part investigation of Idi Amin, the dictator, Idi Amin, where the author wanted to write about Idi Amin's life, his time in power, his extensive time out of power, but he also wanted to write about how we know any of this stuff. How has any of the stuff that I've read in preparation for this book, how can I know that any of it is true? And why was it written? I love that when it's done right. I don't remember reading this when it first came out. The idea for The Heart was birthed when the author uncovered that his father, Michel Petitjean, had a romantic relationship with Kahlo during her time in Paris. Okay. Those are never the letters you're expecting to find when you're clearing out the shoeboxes in the attic. Oh my. It makes me think all the more that maybe I should just officially publish all of the letters I have for Picasso. Kahlo arrived in Paris alone, brokenhearted over her husband's chronic adultery, but also newly financially independent and gaining recognition from selling her art in New York. In Paris, though her exhibition was fraught with frustration, drama, and failed to sell a single piece, she learned how to love, live, and paint again. She spent her days in Paris alongside luminaries such as Picasso, André Breton, Dora Maar, and Marcel Duchamp. At the end of her trip, she gifted Michel one of her paintings, The Heart, painted in 1937, a work which brought together major events in her life, including her childhood polio, a terrible accident, and her husband's affair with her sister. Employing Kahlo's time in Paris as a jumping-off point, the author provides a striking portrait of the artist, transporting readers back and forth in time through her unhappy childhood, persistent health issues, a troubled marriage, many lovers, her involvement with the world of politics, particularly the Spanish Civil War, and of course, her art. Okay, so those of you who love this artist and love just an unfailingly interesting biography, her life story, unlike that of a lot of artists, is unfailingly interesting. You now know that this thing, The Heart, is coming out in just a few days in a paperback. So this is going to be, what is this? A $16 paperback in your bookstores. So if you are one of those people that sort of knew about it when it came out and put it on the back burners because you didn't want to pay the hardcover price, the paperback is now coming out and it's much more affordable. So great. All right. Unbelievably, it can't keep happening, but unbelievably in this mail haul so far, we are all paperbacks. Which is an ideal future for Steve, but it's very unlikely to continue. All right, no, it stops. The next one is a hardcover. Oh, great. Okay. All right, this comes out in mid-September, just a couple of weeks from now. This is the finished copy of something we've already seen. This is the finished copy of... sorry, I want to indulge my curiosity here just for a minute. Okay, yes. This is the finished copy of I Wished, the new novel by Dennis Cooper, with the hideous American cover. It has a blurb by Bret Easton Ellis referring to Dennis Cooper as the last literary outlaw in mainstream American fiction. And it is described in this sell sheet as part elegy, part visionary nightmare. This is Cooper's first book in a long time, so it's tiny, but it's going to get attention. Probably not as much attention as it deserves. He is difficult for family newspapers to justify reviewing. In this book, Dennis Cooper once again draws readers into a deep-end exploration. If I were writing a pub sheet, I would never use the phrase deep-end exploration for anything connected with Dennis Cooper. We'll just sail right on here. Of the dark nexus of desire, obsession, and longing. Cooper returns to George Miles, a real-world figure who is the author shared with who the author... Okay. Okay. George Miles, a real-world figure who the author shared an obsessive friendship with. That's exactly why pedants always put the with ahead of those phrases, because sometimes you run into car crashes like that. You should not have to hunt back 5 lines to find out who the with goes with. That's why I know with whom always sounds pretentious, but that's exactly why you do it. I don't want to read the line again, so let's just move on to the next sentence. This is not a 6th installment in the author's celebrated and masterly cycle of novels inspired by Miles, which began in 1989's Closer and ended in 2000 with Period. Instead, Cooper has created something even more personal and open. This is not a memoir. The author is clear that it is a novel, and it would be a mistake to consider it anything else, so it's a memoir. Okay, great. This is the 21st century, and we're not in 2001 or 2002. We're all well familiar with the bookish world of the 21st century. This is a memoir. Everything in it happened. Every word that is transcribed in here actually was spoken in real life. If the author's going out of his way to say it'd be wrong to consider this anything except anything, that it'd be wrong to consider this a memoir, then it's a memoir. But I wished hews far closer to Cooper's real life than any previous novel. I'll bet it does. I'll bet it does. I'll bet there's stuff in here that's so close it's actionable. And in so doing, gives us a story of loss that is achingly melancholic as it is disturbing, as searchingly philosophical as it is violent. Okay, well, the easiest way, I'll never get the chance, but the easiest way to determine whether or not I'm right that this is just entirely autofiction, that this is the worst, most corrosive fad in the made-up stories in the 21st century, which is people just writing the things from their Twitter accounts, just doing autofiction and not inventing anything. Thank God for genre fiction of all kinds, where authors still think it's part of their job to create things. But the surest way to determine whether or not I'm right would be to meet Dennis Cooper and say, hey, you know that part halfway through I wished? Really don't think it made any sense. Really, you should have plotted that part a little better. If his instantaneous response is it really happened that way and I can prove it, then I think we know what the protestations about this not being a memoir are all about. I don't really care. In this case, I don't really care. I love this author. I think he's brilliant. In his own way, in his own twisted, warped way, I think he's brilliant. I would never miss anything that he wrote, even though there's always the chance. With a novelist like this, sales have never been great. Books have always been a little bit held at arm's length by mainstream reviewers. An extensive cult following. A long delay between this and the last book, and this book not being long and being at the very least heavily autobiographical. All those elements add up. If you're a reviewer or even a reader, a fan of Dennis Cooper, all those elements add up to you maybe thinking this is going to be... I almost indulged in a shamelessly scatological pun about missing a stroke. Let's say missing a step. All those elements add up to you justifiably wondering if maybe this is a lesser work, to put it diplomatically. And I have those worries too. I worry about that too. You get a blurb from Bret Easton Ellis. Did I mention already when this comes out? Yeah, just in a week. This comes out in a couple of weeks, September 14th. You get a blurb from Bret Easton Ellis that refers to Dennis Cooper as the foremost literary outlaw of American letters. It's not about this book. That great quip from Bret Easton Ellis is not about this book. It's about Cooper himself. I have the advanced copy. I haven't got to this thing, but now I am duly reminded that I need to get to it. And I guess there's a part of me that'll go into it armed for disappointment. I've never been disappointed by a Dennis Cooper book, and maybe this will be the first one. We shall see. So let's go on to this last one, and then we'll finish with this enormous mail haul. What is this last one? Okay, all right. This is just going to be a normal hardcover. This is the same thing with the Dennis Cooper. This is going to be a normal hardcover, and this comes out in late November, so right on the doorstep of December. This is by Elizabeth Samet, S-A-M-E-T, and it's called "Looking for the Good War: American Amnesia and the Violent Pursuit of Happiness." There's a fragmented, smiling GI on the cover. I don't have a sheet for this, but what can we do here? In this book, the author re-examines the literature, art, and culture that emerged after World War II, bringing her expertise as a professor of English at West Point to bear on the complexity of the post-war period in national life. She exposes the confusion about American identity that was expressed during and immediately after the war, and the deep national ambivalence toward war, violence, and veterans, all of which were suppressed in subsequent decades by a dangerously sentimental attitude towards the United States' exceptional history and destiny. Ranging across film and literature, she finds the war's ambivalent legacy in some of its most heavily mythologized figures. The war correspondent, epitomized by Ernie Pyle, the character of the erstwhile GI turned either cop or criminal in the pulp fiction and feature films of the late 1940s. The disaffected Civil War veteran who looms so large in the screen in the Cold War Western, and the resurgent military hero of the post-Vietnam period. Taken together, these figures reveal key elements of post-war attitude towards violence, liberty, and nation, attitudes that have shaped domestic and foreign policy and that respond in various ways to various assumptions about national identity and the purpose established or affirmed by World War II. As the United States reassesses its role in Afghanistan and the Middle East, the time has come to rethink our national mythology, the way that World War II shaped our sense of national destiny, our attitude towards the use of American military force throughout the world, and our inability to accept the realities of the 21st century's decades of devastating conflict. Okay, all right, well, I don't have to deal with this until later in the year, but it sounds like I am waiting for this to happen. This sounds like the first drop in a tsunami, the first pebble in an avalanche, or something that I'm waiting for, which is for 21st century Twitter revisionism to say that the Americans were the bad guys in World War II. I'm waiting for that. I don't know that this author of this book will actually say that, but it sounds like we're coming right up to the edge. And once we get to the edge, the next barrage of books will say that. Maybe this author is going to confine her comments to just the social aftermath, like the description says. If so, that would be great. That would be absolutely great. If she doesn't do that, if she does what I've already seen certain weirdos on social media do, and look into the war itself, well, do we really need, really? Yikes, not a good look. Won't age well. Then we're going to have problems, of course. The World War II isn't just mythologized, right? The country went from mostly not wanting to fight to get involved in a European war for the second time in a generation to almost unanimously wanting to get involved in a European war in the same generation. The country went from being fragmented to being entirely into the war production effort to free Europe, to conquer the Japanese Empire, not just to revenge Pearl Harbor, but also because this tyrannical evil, the second worst tyrannical evil in the 20th century, had engulfed most of the centers of civilization in the Western world and needed to be fought by somebody. There's nothing wrong with any of that. That is not mythology. That actually happened. There was a good side and a bad side in World War II. But maybe this author is, that was, after all, just the book's description. It wasn't the book itself. Maybe this is going to be a much more complex view of things. That would be great. That would be great. Although even if it is, it's just a thumb in the dike. You know those takes are coming. That the United States was the bad guy in World War II. You know that we're going to live to see that in professionally published histories. I'm just going to have to live with it. I'm going to have to gird myself for it, and maybe this will help. I will wait until I get the finished copy before I dig into this, but it certainly does sound fascinating, right? Either way, no matter whether it gets your blood boiling or not. I don't know about you, but I tend to like histories that get my blood boiling. So we have Looking for the Good War. I'm pretty sure this author is going to say it didn't exist. I have relatives who fought in it who weren't fooling themselves. But anyway, then I Wished by Dennis Cooper in the finished copy, his latest novel, first one in a decade. Then The Heart, a book on Frida Kahlo in Paris that has a direct personal connection with the author, but I think that probably was a spur for the author to do a lot of research. So those of you who are fans of this artist will probably want this book. If you don't have the hardcover, you'll probably want to get the paperback. Then a string of paperback originals. This Jade World by Ira Sukrungrang. Then Cascade, a collection of stories by Craig Davison that is not set in Niagara Falls. No, it's Cataract City. I see how you could get those mixed up. It happens all the time. And finally, When Sparks Fly, a new contemporary friends to lovers romance. Very difficult gimmick in romances to do well. So we'll see if this one does. I am no fan of cartoon covers, and they are a huge fad in the romance world. I don't particularly like them, but I do occasionally judge a book by things other than its cover. So I will give this one a try along those lines. Well, there you go. I cannot make short videos. I'm going to wrap up this mail haul and go. But I thank you, BookTube, and I will be back.